my fellow Americans.
Let's talk about the situation at the border. We've seen a huge surge in migrants crossing the border since January. The number of children in custody higher than it was than its 2019 peak during the Trump administration. Your colleague Veronica Escobar of Texas called the conditions there unacceptable. She was there on Friday. Is she right? What more must be done?
Actually, the facts are these. There are more children, about 600-700 more children, unaccompanied children, coming over the border. This is a humanitarian challenge to all of us. What the administration has inherited is a broken system at the border, and they are working to correct that in the children's interest. I'm so pleased that the president, as a temporary measure, has sent FEMA to the border in order to help facilitate the children going from one 72-hour issue into where they are cared for as they are transferred into family homes or homes that are safe for them to be.
And I have to confess, I knew nothing about their suffering until 2021 when I volunteered to help the Biden administration with the crisis at the southern border. As part of Operation Artemis, I was deployed to the Pomona Fairplex Emergency Intake Site in California to help HHS, Office of Refugee Resettlement, reunite children with sponsors in the United States. I thought I was going to help place children in loving homes. Instead, I discovered that children are being trafficked through a sophisticated network that begins with recruiting in home country, smuggling to the U.S. border, and ends when ORR delivers a child to a sponsor. Some sponsors are criminals and traffickers and members of transnational criminal organizations. Some sponsors view children as commodities and assets to be used for earning income. This is why we are witnessing an explosion of labor trafficking. Now, whether it's intentional or not, it could be argued that the United States government has become the middleman in a large-scale, multi-billion-dollar child trafficking operation that is run by bad actors seeking to profit off of the lives of children.
Russia said once they take Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. Those are NATO countries. That puts America at war. This is about preventing war. It's always been about preventing war. My husband is a combat veteran. He's deployed now. The last thing I want him or any of his military brothers and sisters to do is to go to war.
But I think it is time to give the Ukrainians more help hitting these bases inside Russia.
One of the reasons that the administration has hesitated is because they believe it will escalate things even further with Russia pull the U.S. further in. Why not? Why do you think that's a good idea?
Because it's Russia that has escalated this war. Russia has learned how to pull its forces back out of the range where we have allowed Ukraine to use our weapons and get our support.
American media outlets have spoken to scores of people from Ukraine, and they've done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky, and we hope he accepts. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to amplify Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe and pay for it. That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Propaganda of the ugliest kind, the kind that kills people. At the same time, our politicians and media outlets have been doing this, promoting a foreign leader like he's a new consumer brand. Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin. Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice. That's wrong. Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in, and we have the right to tell them about it because we are Americans too.
The idea that we're going to send in offensive equipment and have planes and tanks and trains going in with American pilots and American crews, just understand, and don't kid yourself, no matter what you all say, that's called World War III.
A U.S. official has confirmed to CBS News President Biden has given authorization for Kyiv to use U.S.-supplied long-range weapons to strike deep into Russian territory.
I'm sitting here with my father. I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father. Sounds like a shakedown, doesn't it, Director?
I'm not going to get into commenting on that.
You seem deeply uncurious about it, don't you? Almost suspiciously uncurious. Are you protecting the Bidens?
Absolutely not. The FBI does not and has no interest in
You won't answer the question about whether or not that's a shakedown, and everybody knows why you won't answer it. Because to the millions of people who will see this, they know it is. And your inability to acknowledge that is deeply revealing about you.
British police came into the embassy and arrested.
After a long flight from the UK, Julian Assange's day began on the island of Saipan, a tiny territory chosen because it's the closest US court to Australia. This normally quiet courthouse, swarming with reporters, as the WikiLeaks founder arrived flanked by former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd.
Individual used an AR-15 in order to act out his assassination attempt. An AR-15 has a range of about 400 to 600 yards. My question, why is the Secret Service protective perimeter shorter than one of the most popular semi-automatic weapons in the United States?
There are a number of weapons out there with a number of ranges. Again, an advance was completed. The determination of the perimeter, I'm not going to speak to specifics, but there are a number of factors that are taken into account when we determine our perimeter. Some of it has to do with terrain, some of it has to do with buildings, some of it has to do with assets and resources that are available.
What I'm hearing is that a perimeter was not established outdoors in an outdoor venue that would prevent an AR-15, which is one of the most common weapons used in mass shootings, from being able to be within the range of Secret Service protection.
Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th, yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
So what is the threat to democracy? People on both sides, people in power, saying out loud that they want to control what you get to hear and see. It is real, it is a threat, and it is happening and growing. And I'll tell you what, punishing thought is on the agenda. And I just heard it from someone who's not a kook, not Alex Jones, not Tucker Carlson, one of the most sober and intelligent politicians of our time, Hillary Rodham Clinton.
I think it's important to indict the Russians, just as Mueller indicted a lot of Russians who were engaged in direct election interference and boosting Trump back in 2016. But I also think there are Americans who are engaged in this kind of propaganda. And whether they should be civilly or even in some cases criminally charged is something that would be a better deterrence.
Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg admitted that the Biden administration repeatedly pressured Meta to censor content, including information about Hunter Biden, and Zuck admitted that he also regrets complying with these demands. In a letter to the House Judiciary Committee Chairman, Representative Jim Jordan, Zuck writes, quote, "The FBI warned us about a potential Russian disinformation operation about the Biden family and Burisma in the lead up to the 2020 election. That fall, when we saw a New York Post story reporting on Joe Biden's family, we sent that story to fact checkers for review and temporarily demoted it."
You know, you do some tweets that seem to be, or at least give support to some who would call others conspiracy theories.
Well, yes, but I mean, honestly, you know, some of these conspiracy theories have turned out to be true.
Which ones?
Well, like the Hunter Biden laptop.
That's true?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am in awe of Ms. Jankowicz. When the department picked her, did it know that she had said that Mr. Hunter Biden's laptop is Russian disinformation? Did it know that she had vouched for the veracity of the Steele dossier?
Senator, let me repeat myself and add an additional fact. One, we do not discuss internal hiring processes.
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech.
To be a conspiracy theorist is to have been right all along, despite the efforts of the paid-for liars. And it's also to be demonstrably well ahead of the gullible, still believing in smoke and mirrors. Conspiracy theorist was first used by the CIA to shut down those who doubted the official line about the murder of John F. Kennedy, that fishy old tale about a lone shooter and a magic bullet, and then that lone shooter being shot by another lone shooter before he could talk. That was in the 1960s, and from then, the label conspiracy theorist worked for decades as the means to make thinking people too scared to speak when they smelt a rat. Let 2024 be the year of clearing out the rubbish, the trash, the long overdue year when the past or sell-by-date labels, conspiracy theorist among them, are cast into the dustbin of history.
Welcome, everyone, to Redacted on this Wednesday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm here, too. I'm Natalie Morris.
Good to see all of you guys. And we have a busy show for you on this Wednesday. A big, beautiful spending bill set to be voted on in Congress. Big, beautiful, and massive debt bomb that's about to go off in Washington. Why have all these conservatives suddenly forgotten their conservative values? Congressman Thomas Massie is going to join us in moments to talk about that.
Plus, we're going to talk about the war with Iran, because it seems that Israel's going ahead with it, whether the United States wants it or not. Are they lying to us? Does the United States want it, but want to pretend that they don't? It sure seems that way. Plus, we want to talk about conservative voices, or anti-war voices, rather, that are being suppressed as this war ratchets up, including Redacted. Now, we're pretty sure that we're seeing anyone who's willing to speak out against this war downranked. We would love to have a discussion with you about it. Have you seen that happen? Have you seen other voices that are speaking out about it? Because there is prologue for this. We had that happen during the war with Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, the war in Vietnam. It's happening. We're here. This is our time, you guys, to mobilize and discuss it.
We're also going to be talking about Maui as a follow-up story, and we've been looking and spending quite a bit of time doing research on what has actually happened with Maui. It's almost 2 years ago, if you can believe that, since the Maui wildfires devastated Lahina and surrounding areas. Well, where do things stand now? Nearly 2 years later. I mean, August encroaching upon us when that would be the 2-year anniversary. But we're going to deep dive this. We're going to talk about directed energy weapons. We're going to talk about the real estate market there. All of it is coming up on today's show. But first,
we want to tell you about our friends over at Hungry Root, because if you, like the Morris family, are experiencing May-cember, you are too busy to meal plan. Just before the show, I asked Clayton, what do you think we should have for dinner today? And he's like, I don't know, because we are in between meal delivery services. Now, May-cember is when, I don't know, you have graduations, you have sports tournaments, you have dance recitals, you have every sports banquet, musical banquet. We are going crazy here. If you are like us, you need help planning your meals, and that's where Hungry Root comes in. It's like having your own personal shopper to make sure that you can have dinner at home with your family instead of ordering out, and you can have a healthy meal that you've put together. Now, they have all manner of meal plans, whether you're vegan or high protein, you want something low inflammation, whatever it is you'd like, they can suit your needs, and it's shipped to you healthy, affordable, and for your family. You know, statistics show that kids who have dinner with their family every night do better on all kinds of measures. So that's why it's great to make an effort and not put yourself through the hell of grocery shopping. So go to hungryroot.com/redacted. If you use the code redacted, you get 40% off your first box, plus a free item in every box for life. So one more time, that's hungryroot.com/redacted, and make sure you use our promo code redacted to get healthy family meals at home. Hungryroot.com/redacted. Well, Israel will have their war with Iran, even if the Trump administration secures a nuclear treaty. So is that treaty some kind of exercise in futility? Now, CNN is reporting that, but Israel has been saying it outright, so hardly is it a scoop. Now, publicly, the Trump administration has said they want a nuclear deal. They do not want to partner with Israel to bomb Iran, but they have moved the goalpost in just a matter of weeks, clearing a path for an attack on Iran. Now, originally, this is in April, rather, they said they wanted Iran to have a nuclear energy program. So some enrichment of uranium was fine, but they could not enrich, look at this here, anywhere near 90%, which is needed for a nuclear bomb. Steve Witkoff here says this to Fox News in April, that 3.67% of enrichment, we can live with that. That would be fine. To which Israel said, actually, no, 3% is not okay, even though 3% can never become a bomb. You need it to be at 90%. But Israel said, absolutely, our threshold is 0. No uranium in Iran, full stop, 0. And then the United States changed their tune. Here is Witkoff just 1 month later saying, yes, 0 is the amount. Previously, we said 3%. Now it's 0. What, I ask you, changed in a month? We have never been able to prove that Iran had a nuclear program. The Obama administration did their damnedest to try. The Bush administration launched a cyber weapon on their nuclear centrifuges with Israel. And still we have no proof. A decade later, the highest enrichment observed by the IAEA, that's the International Atomic Energy Agency, was 60%. And they told us they inspected every gram. So what is this absolute panic and determination to bomb Iran? Now, Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi, I'm sorry, I'm not saying his name properly. He said, look.
Better than I could say it.
Look, we are going to have a nuclear program because it is one of our crowning achievements. He says, we need it, they've said all along, for nuclear power and other types of industry. He said, if the U.S. is interested in ensuring that Iran will not have a nuclear weapon, a deal is within reach. We're serious about the weapons program, but you need to come to the table and let's stop fighting in public because it's counterintuitive. He also retweeted a post from this independent journalist saying, again, the U.S. is being incredibly inconsistent. We can see this. We're Americans and we can see this, that originally the Trump administration said 3% enrichment is fine, and now they're saying 0. We have to acknowledge that our own diplomats are being inconsistent.
This is, I mean, what's changed here? What's changed? 60% enrichment was fine. Then it's 0% is fine. Like they keep moving the goalpost here.
Right. Then 3% is fine. And even the Trump administration had said, we want Iran to be prosperous. Affordable energy is the way to prosperity. We want them to have that. Israel said, absolutely not. And then the United States said, we don't want that. We never said that. We don't mean that. We never said that. So, okay, we're studying. We're following. Why? Why has the football been moved? Okay.
It's goalposts.
What Obama used to always say, you're moving the football.
No, you're moving the goalposts.
This is also a thing from Charlie Brown.
Oh, I guess
you
you're
move
moving
the football. You pull the football.
All right, I get it. Yeah. But I think moving the goalposts.
This was a proper use of idioms.
Okay.
It comes from Charlie Brown.
We joke that Natalie can never get an idiom correct, like an apple a day.
Yeah.
Do you know what that one is?
I do. Keeps the doctor away.
Wow, that's very good.
This one, last night we taught our kids, they'd never heard it. We want a pitcher.
Not a belly itcher.
Right. They didn't know this. I guess kids these days don't say that. Like foster boys, you knew it.
That's not an idiom. That's just like a baseball.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but so they're moving the goalpost repeatedly, and they're also pulling a Charlie Brown, Lucy pulling the football from Charlie Brown.
That's exactly where I was going. I'm glad you're following me.
Am.
Okay, audience, are you? I hope you are. I'm trying to be clear, and if I'm not, I own that. So who here is acting in good faith? Is it us? Usually it's not. It doesn't feel like it is, given we were fairly encouraged that the United States was working in good faith with Iran, wanting the best for them, not lying about a nuclear weapon. How did this happen? Or is it Israel's wish list for that war and our secret foreign policy goals? Now, this is the way CNN reports it, that the heightened worry stems from the public and private messaging from senior Israeli officials. I'm sorry, I cut off that screenshot. That's on me. What it's saying here is we're spying on them, that we know what their private messaging is. We've seen it. They want this. And why not? They spy on us, I guess. Are we all cool with that? That would be an international scandal, right, if we were paying attention. And they seem to be prepping for a war with Iran with the weapons that we send them. So why would Israel thwart the U.S. peace deal? To sabotage that deal is what CNN is reporting. This source, unnamed source, says it's more likely that they strike to try and get the American deal to fall apart because they're saying it will be a bad deal. So either the U.S. is doing Israel's bidding or Israel is trying to sabotage U.S. negotiations. Or here's the third option from former U.S. Marine Brian Berletic and the New Atlas YouTube channel. If you haven't seen his channel, it's fantastic. As he puts it, there is no daylight between the U.S. and Israel, and there is no daylight between the Trump and Biden administration. This was always the plan all along. We are being yanked by the chain to believe that there is really anyone working against it. So what do you think? Is this all a charade to pretend we can have plausible deniability that we didn't want this war with Iran all along? Is the spirit of John McCain, who wanted this so badly, still calling the shots. What do you think?
The spirit of John McCain, who famously sang a song on stage about bomb Iran, bomb Iran. And we're like, he really absolutely. And then you have warmongers like Lindsey Graham and others in Congress who are still actively pushing for this to happen, using whatever sort of stories and narratives, deep state narratives that they can to come up with it. Remember, the Iranian mothership was off the coast of the United States ready to bomb us right before President Trump took office. So there was an Iranian mothership right there.
Right.
There was an attack in London from Iranians. It was all tied to Iran once again. So you hear these narratives all around Europe.
But don't forget, Iran also tried to assassinate President Trump.
Yeah, even
while
though
he was on the campaign
Roger
trail.
Stone called BS on that from the very beginning, that was another deep state ploy to drag us into a war with Iran. So people in the chat room are pointing out, they're like, President Trump seems to change with the wind on this. And it's like, I don't know, whoever has him last in the room has a conversation with him. That's who, and he just sort of changes with the wind. So we're at 60% enriched uranium, then at 0, and we just keep moving things around.
Right. I mean, I feel like that's a little condescending to say that he doesn't have his own foreign policy that's consistent. And that is how people report that whoever had his ear last is where he goes. Surely he has some idea about either wanting or not wanting a war with Iran. But is it going to keep us safe? Is it put in? I really don't know, because, again, it's whatever the way the wind blows right now, the way Israel says. And so we can't. We're studying this. We're following you. You're a windsock.
Well, yeah, that's a good way to put it. And we know internally, we know sources here at Redacted know that there are people surrounding President Trump who actively do not want a war with Iran, J.D. Vance specifically. Are those voices strong enough to prevent this from happening, to not do Israel's bidding and moving us towards a massively damaging war for the United States? Remember, we have 50,000 American troops that are stationed in that region right now. We've had multiple experts on the show pointing out that they would be sitting ducks, that they're not actual military bases, and many of them are like small outposts. They don't have the ability to stop any sort of hypersonic weapons or anything for that matter. Very minimal protection for these 50,000 Americans. Why the hell are we there? Why the hell are we involving ourselves with this? We need to get out of that space.
Right. And I want to talk about this because as this continues to heat up, the war in Gaza is horrid. I think there's no one who can deny that. Israel wants.
There are plenty of people that can deny
it on but on the basis that they deserve it. But no one's denying that civilians are being killed in horrific ways. Now, as this happens, we are fairly certain here at Redacted that anti-war voices are being shadow banned, including us. Now, we notice what our live streams look like. We're watching the amount of people that are allowed to watch our videos. If we put Israel and Iran in the title, we suffer, and we can tell that. Now, is it because, and please ring in, are you too tired of war? Do you have war fatigue from the war in Ukraine that you just can't follow another one? Or do you think something else is at work? We would really benefit from knowing, because we're watching this research. We're trying to see, are people being downranked and shadow banned? Well, past his prologue for this, we should be able to see this clearly now. Since 2003, we've had this pivotal study showing how the media was suppressing the anti-war narrative around the war in Iraq. This was a study that found that 64% of sources on major networks were pro-war, only 10% were anti-war, and among U.S. sources, even worse, 3% were anti-war, resulting in a 25-to-1 ratio favoring pro-war voices over anti-war. Now, back then, we did not have independent journalists with big channels. We did not have influencers to tell a different story. But now that we do, we see those voices being shadow banned, and we've noticed that on our channel. Now, we've been through this before. In 2021, when the war broke out in Ukraine, we were given a channel strike for reporting what the Ukrainian army had been doing to the people of the Donbas region for over a decade. We've seen this, right? We notice this now with other influencers who speak out on behalf of starving civilians in Gaza. Here's just one example that I saw today. Elvin Kilgore, he said, in the past few months, I get hundreds of thousands of likes or interactions. Now he's struggling with just 10 likes on a post daily. So something has switched. He's appealing to Elon Musk, but Musk is decidedly pro-Israel and has been suspiciously quiet on X about politics lately. He says he's sort of ramping down his political voice. But censorship seems, or shadow banning seems to be happening, if you ask me. Now, we can argue about the word genocide. That hardly matters at this point. What is not in dispute is that Israel is causing innocent civilians to starve and die horrific deaths. And right-wing politicians in Israel are mad that just this week, Israel is claiming to have let even a nominal amount of aid into Gaza. Here is National Security Minister on Tuesday saying that these aid trucks are a grave mistake that delays our victory. Because, I mean, if someone's already starving, they're almost dead. Then you're going to prolong that death? Come on.
Yeah, I mean, keep them alive a little bit longer. Like
right.
That's taking away your game plan.
He says that there is no way to ensure that food won't end up in the hands of Hamas murderers. Question: if you pretend that you love your hostages and they are in the hands of Hamas, do you want them to starve? Is that collateral damage? Because you're saying you're doing this to get the hostages back, but then you're knowingly starving your own hostages. What's the logic in that? Clayton, do you
I don't. There's no logic in this.
Okay. More proof, I think, that they don't care about the hostages. Now, here's Israel saying they are letting aid into Gaza and making sure that it doesn't get to Hamas. But this is a total canard. Palestinian-American journalist Ramzi Baroud explained this to us on Redacted just a few weeks ago. He says Hamas is not like a group of bad guys. It is a political ideology for many Palestinians. You can't kill all Republicans in the United States and then have that ideal die. Listen to how he put it.
Gaza is a different story. Hamas is Gaza and Gaza is Hamas. You have a society that is so well connected, you can't even decide who, like my family has representation from all sorts of political backgrounds. My family is mostly communist and socialist, but you also have your Fatah and your Hamas and your everybody. It's not the kind of thing you would say, two of the brothers stay in Gaza and the other two brothers would leave Gaza. It makes no sense. Netanyahu knows this, but he is trying to increase the ceiling of the demands to make it appear as if it's the Palestinians who are delaying the process of a final ceasefire that would allow Palestinians to receive finally some respite, some food, some electricity, some water, gas for their cars, material for reconstruction of Gaza. So he's using this as a tactic. But in actuality, there can be no scenario, imaginable scenario, in which Hamas or any other Palestinian group will leave Gaza. It's just not going to happen.
Okay. So what the response is, the Israeli response is, when you speak out on behalf of this horrific situation for civilians, is no, you need to still be mad about October 7th, which gives us the license to keep going. So if you speak on behalf of civilians who are suffering today, you need to still be mad about October 7th, under the assumption that everything began on October 7th. Now, we've covered this at length, that on October 7th, Israel had 5,000 Palestinian prisoners, many of them held without cause, many of them women and children, most of them subject to beating and sexual assault. You can't care about them. You can only care about the people who died and were harmed and captured on October 7th. You're not supposed to value lives equally, full stop. In fact, Israel is saying that if you are not only outraged about October 7th, that's blood libel. Here they are speaking out against Tom Fletcher, the head of the United Nations, who keeps saying, we need to rescue these people, we need to give them aid, which means, again, we are supposed to look the other way when civilians are killed because we're mad about October 7th. We are mad about October 7th. We are sad about those deaths equally as the deaths that continue. The only reasonable human reaction is to want us to stop now. Now they are attacking the utmost peace voices, including Julian Assange. Assange wore this shirt to an event in Cannes this week with the names of almost 5,000 Palestinian children under 5 killed since 2023 by the Israeli government. Now they're saying he's a Hamas supporter. I'm sorry, but I'd like to remind you that he was persecuted for showing how the United States with Israel went into bloody and pointless wars in the Middle East. This has always been his position. This is not new. Oh, and the Pope. The Pope is now an anti-Semite for posting this, that the situation in Gaza is worrying and painful. Here are all the comments saying, why aren't you talking about the hostages? What about Palestinians? Or what about Israelis? Well, he's not talking about any race of people. He's talking about all who are suffering, which we can assume does include the hostage. So to my mind, when they attack Assange and the peaceful message of the Pope, you know where this is leading. You know where anti-war voices are headed. So let us know. Are you seeing this? Are you engaged with this? Do you see the shadow banning of anti-war voices? Because we are increasingly panicked about the fact that we will not be able to reach our audience with this because this is what's happening. Let us know if we are on the mark.
A friend of the show, Tucker Carlson, mentioned this just the other day. I mean, his big concern is that because if you're speaking out against this, if you are actively engaged in trying to prevent wars, that they're going to shut this down. They're going to shut down the ability for us to have this type of speech. And a lot of people in the chat room and, like Kevin Daniels says, Redacted is only for non-wars, not on any side. Yeah, we're vehemently anti-war, and anti-war voices are completely marginalized on these independent platforms. I hope maybe members of Congress, I would love for members of Congress to haul people up from like YouTube in front of them and ask, like, how are they actively shadow banning independent voices who are speaking out against these topics? If only we had a congressman we could speak to about all of these issues, but he's busy with other stuff right now. But we will, in just moments, talk with Congressman Thomas Massie about that big, beautiful spending bill. That's how it's being portrayed right now. The amount of spending in Washington, D.C., could it sink the United States of America? The debt time bomb that we're sitting on right now, $36 trillion in debt, and Congress wants to spend more? Really? Is this what we voted for? We're going to talk about that. And so much more. But first,
we want to tell you about our friends over at Hillsdale College, because if you, like us, are lifelong learners, then this is a great place to go to school without really going to school. You don't have to get up early like your kids and pack a lunch. You can take courses that interest you to further your own education based on what you're interested in. Now, this is self-guided, and they have more than 40 free online courses, such as the works of C.S. Lewis, the stories in the book of Genesis, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution, which is constantly debated in this country, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic. So we want to recommend that you sign up. Here's a good one: Introduction to Aristotle's Ethics, How to Lead a Good Life. So again, these are self-paced, and you can start whenever and wherever. So start your free course today. Head on over to hillsdale.edu/redacted to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. One more time, that's hillsdale.edu/redacted.
Well, many conservatives or rhinos seem to forget that they're conservative whenever Congress is set to vote on a big spending bill. Whoops. My conservative values just seem to go right out the window. Congress, is inches away right now from voting on President Trump's big, beautiful spending bill. The Wall Street Journal has basically called this debt bill a debt time bomb that could crush the United States. Senator Ron Johnson just told the ugly truth about the bill. He criticized the bill for exacerbating the national debt and ignoring the looming entitlement bomb. Congressman Thomas Massie has never forgotten his conservative values, even in the face of immense pressure from rhinos and neocons. Massie tweeted this: "The big beautiful bill will add $20 trillion of federal debt over 10 years. And that's according to the authors of the bill." Massie also posted this meme showing exactly how MAGA folks feel about it. MAGA staring at one beautiful bill with no more omnibus bills being the old girlfriend on the right. That sums it up perfectly. Congressman Thomas Massie joins us today from Washington, D.C. Congressman, great to see you. How bad will this be for the United States of America, this spending bill?
It's going to be bad, and we're already seeing what's going to happen. There was an auction on 20-year Treasury bonds here in the last few hours, and the federal government's now going to have to pay 5.1% on 20-year debt. The day before, it was at 5% for 30-year debt and 4.5% for 10-year debt. Look, the only reason we're already not swimming in interest payments right now that would equal $4,000 for every man, woman, and child in the United States every day is because some of our debt is locked in to the old rates, the good old days where we had 2%. But the markets are responding to the big, beautiful bill.
look, they're not going to wait for this thing to pass. They're watching the whip count. They know this thing is greased and it's about to go get through Congress. And so they're putting their money where their bets are. They're making their bets. And what we have the Republicans telling other Republicans here is, oh, this thing is deficit neutral. Well, guess what's going to happen in the big, beautiful bill? All of the things that cost money, that increase the deficit, happen in the first 5 years, and the savings come in the next 5 years. Let me give you an example. Work requirements for Medicaid, those don't kick in for several years. And even when they do, they're pretty much fake. You can get out of work by saying you're taking some kind of training. Let me give you another example. All the Green New Deal, which was relabeled the Inflation Reduction Act, a lot of those subsidies are still going to remain after the big, beautiful bill passes. It should have been T-ball, just to knock the ball off the tee, just to take out the Green New Deal subsidies. But no, there's so many corporate lobbyists up here who have started planning to build factories and in some cases started building factories. They want their subsidies to continue. So what the Republicans are doing in the big, beautiful bill is they're cutting the tax credits and subsidies if you want to buy solar panels and put them on your house, but they're not cutting them for the corporations if they want to buy solar panels. Or if you want to solar panels on your house, you can get the tax credit. You just can't own the solar panels. You got to go get them through a company. It's bad tax policy, and the worst of the tax policy is the handout to the blue state governors, New York, California, and Illinois. This is something called SALT tax. I got to give Trump credit. In 2017, the original Tax Cut and Jobs Act, which had the tax cuts that the big, beautiful bill would extend, and I'm in favor of extending those tax cuts. But that tax plan in 2017 reduced the amount of local taxes that you could write off on your federal taxes to $10,000. Well, this bill is going to undo the best tax policy that Trump put in place back then by raising that deduction to $40,000. This is for people who own $1 million or $2 million houses in New York, and they're paying a lot of property tax. This big, beautiful bill is a handout, and it's going to cost everybody else in the red states where the governors don't raise the taxes. It's going to cost about $350 billion to give that handout to these blue states.
Goodness. Okay, so I'm very suspicious about the timing about this because we all got collectively riled up about Doge, like, oh, they're cutting that. I like this. Okay, it feels good, right? And so it feels like we were built up to think, okay, now the government has saved all kinds of money. Now we can spend on priorities. And Elon Musk, he's done. He's got Tesla to worry about. He's gone. He's going to step back. Does it feel like a ruse to you? Because it was like we saved $5 and now here's a new $10,000 credit card bill.
You know, it started feeling like a ruse to me back when Republicans, and they got the president to go along with this, put a continuing resolution on the floor. And basically, that's when you do an appropriations bill. But instead of writing 12 separate bills, you just say, you know what? Let's just do what we did last year. We'll cut, copy, paste that spreadsheet into this year's spreadsheet. Well, guess what? Last year's spreadsheet was Joe Biden's spending. They copied all of Joe Biden's spending into Trump's first year with that continuing resolution. I was the only Republican to vote against it because I said spending is policy. When you spend the money, you're directing the government to do things. And so the only consolation I had, Natalie, was, well, we could do rescissions. We could say we're going to spend this money, and we could pass a law to spend this money, but we could go back and claw that money back with this process called rescissions that only requires 51 votes in the Senate. Here's the problem. We haven't done any rescissions. And by the way, rescissions aren't like the big, beautiful bill, which is another R word called reconciliation. You can only do that once or maybe twice a year. You can do reconciliation. Rescissions, we could vote on a rescission every day if we wanted to, but we haven't brought the first rescission to the floor. Now, Speaker Johnson is blaming the White House. They're doing this quietly. And he's saying, well, they haven't requested the rescissions, and we're waiting for the request. And it's true enough, he needs a request. But I kind of think he's telling the White House, don't send me the request, because that starts a 45-day clock where I have to vote on these rescissions. And when we dig into this, when we ask people at the White House what's really going on, they say, well, we're trying to get past the big, beautiful bill, and then we'll do the rescissions, because we don't want to spend any political capital on these rescissions now. Well, what's the political capital you're spending? Cutting USAID? Again, that should be T-ball. Put it on the tee, knock it off with a bat, run to first base, and jump up and down. It should be that easy.
It should be that easy. People in the chat room are pointing out. And by the way, ask your questions of Congressman Massey. We're live in front of thousands of people right now. Goalapaco says, you guys are, meaning us, I think, not you, you're mischaracterizing Doge. Musk did good. Republicans didn't want to cut the costs. So it's the do-nothing Republicans. Is that fair?
Oh, that's fair. I mean, it's not the do-nothing Republicans. For the money that Doge found was money that Republicans were spending. So when I was standing at the State of the Union, and the president, Elon Musk, I'm a big fan. I drive a Tesla, all that. I use Starlink. He was in the crowd. He was up there in the position of honor, and the president's naming some of the things that Doge had already found that they were going to cut. And my colleagues stand up and start clapping. And I'm thinking, wait, you're the chairs of the committee of jurisdiction that spent this money, and you are clapping that you should be embarrassed. You should pull your suit up over your head and pretend you're not even there, because this is shame. And it was all a ruse. They don't want to vote on that. I think there's some reporters that have exposed how some of this USAID money actually that goes to NGOs starts flowing back to organizations where you have members of the House and the Senate who are on the boards of these organizations. It's starting to expose things. And so my hat's off to Elon Musk and all the Doge folks who found that. But what you have is when Trump tries not to spend the money that Doge found, the courts say, well, wait, you've already signed a law that says you're going to spend the money. And so the courts tie up Trump. And this would be a problem if we didn't control the House and the Senate, or if it took 60 votes in the Senate to claw this money back. But neither of those two things are true. It only takes 51 votes in the Senate, and we control the House and the Senate. We should be doing these as frequently as we name post offices up here.
Now, I think the rest of us are watching this palace intrigue like, ooh, Massey and Trump, they're not aligned. But surely you do have a personal relationship with President Trump that's not contentious like this in public. And what do you think he actually thinks of being held his feet to the fire, so to speak? Do you think that he just really, something that I've been wondering is, he told us, expect a little pain while we adjust the market perversions. And maybe he lost his appetite for it, or maybe it's just, it's too scary to do.
Well, he came after me again yesterday on his way to the GOP meeting. He stopped at a media scrum, and they asked him, what about Thomas Massey's claims that you're adding to the deficit? And rather than answer the question, he attacked me. Which is fine. He's a bull in a china shop, and if a few of my, glasses and cups and dishes get broken, that's fine. I can deal with that. I've got a thick skin. But he came to the GOP meeting. He asked if I was in the room, and I raised my hand and looked him in the eye, and he said, "Oh, hey, there he is. There's Massey." And he said he's like Rand Paul. They're both from Kentucky. They both vote no on all this stuff, and they both have the same hair. And then he said, but I like Massey's hair better. So,
okay.
It wasn't like a shouting match or anything. And
yeah.
He and I have had several good conversations on the phone in the past. I think a lot of what he is doing is part of the whip effort not to change my vote, but to try to get the other members of Congress who are thinking about speaking truth to power like I am. He's trying to get them to think twice about it. In other words, to just sort of go along and rubber stamp this. And there are things, for instance, that Trump said in our meeting yesterday that don't jibe with this bill. And so we go to Mike Johnson and say, what gives? For instance, Trump says, get rid of all the Green New Deal. Take it all out. But the reality is they're not taking it out. They're leaving, probably half of it in there, and the stuff they're cutting doesn't get cut for another 4 years. Again, that basically creates job security for the Green New Deal lobbyists who have 4 years to come up here and lobby members of Congress and show them all these projects in their district that are benefiting from this Green New Deal spending that they don't want to cut. And they'll probably get those subsidies renewed before they run out. And that's the problem.
Cole's Towing in our chat room says, Thomas Massey, you're one of the good ones. Keep it up. We support you. Congressman, I'll get you out of here on this. Well, two questions. Really, you're from Kentucky. I want to know what the hell is going on with this Fort Knox audit that we were hearing all about. President Trump was going to go in there. Elon Musk was going to live stream it. We're going to find out how much gold is actually there. Would we actually move towards a gold standard in the United States once again? Shore up the U.S. dollar. So I want to ask you about that. And then second, and I'll get you out of here on this last question, which is, how bad is it right now with the U.S. debt in America, $36 trillion? Like, are we facing a crisis that we can't come back from in the next few years?
Well, I don't know much about what's going on in Fort Knox. That is not in my district, but all of America should be concerned about it. It shouldn't have to be that it's just Kentucky concern or a district concern. I'm afraid some of those memes that have, like the guardsman with Krylon painting bricks gold may be too close to the truth. It's something that'll pass an audit. I don't know. There should be transparency. But again, we're not on the gold standard. The dollar, we've got a fiat currency, and we're losing basically the reserve status of the U.S. dollar by doing all these sanctions. For instance, I know in your segment earlier about Iran, we've sanctioned Iran, we've sanctioned Russia, we've sanctioned some other countries. And what happens when you do that is they quit transacting in U.S. dollars, they quit holding U.S. dollars in reserve. And so we're losing our status as a world reserve currency by shooting ourselves in the foot. I had a professor at MIT called this ballistic podiatry, which is a fancy way of saying you're shooting yourself in the foot if you're a practitioner of ballistic podiatry. But I think that we are doing that with respect to our reserve status. And what that means, just to get to the second part of your question, when we monetize our debt, in other words, when we print money and try to buy our own securities because there's nobody at the auctions that want them at the price that we're selling these securities, when we do that, we're actually not just cheating Americans who are holding dollars and transacting in dollars and getting paid their salaries in dollars. We're screwing the rest of the world. We're actually getting a pretty good deal. Everybody that's holding dollars, we're taking money out of their banks through inflation when we do it. That's why the United States, when you say, why hasn't this collapsed before? It's because we can do this inflation trick and we can do it to other countries as well. But the music's going to stop on that as fewer and fewer countries hold U.S. dollars as a reserve. Now, which gets me to your second question, which is how bad is the debt? Okay, we're at 36 trillion. It's actually a lot more than that because we had hit the debt limit a few months ago in reality. And so we've been selling things like the Postal Workers Pension Fund, okay, we've been liquidating that. And so what's going to happen when they do raise the debt ceiling, I don't see anybody talking about this. When they raise the debt ceiling inside of this big, beautiful bill, they're going to have to unwind all that, which means the government's going to have a voracious appetite for debt. We're going to go out and sell lots of bonds so that we can get that cash and put it back in the Postal Workers Pension Fund because we've been running on a reserve tank that we've got to fill back up. That's when I think you're going to see the bond buyers' appetite go down even more, which means they're going to demand higher interest rates. So my complaint about the big, beautiful bill is not just that using the budget that supports the big, beautiful bill is going to add over $20 trillion to our debt in the next 10 years. Some people say, well, you were going to add most of that anyway. Yeah, but the big, beautiful bill makes it even worse. and it doesn't address the fundamental problems with Medicaid and Medicare, that's not even the only problem, is that additional debt. We're sending a signal to the markets that we're not serious about our fiscal policy in this country. They're going to demand higher interest rates on the $36 trillion that's already in the bank. And when they do that, you know, we're going to be paying pretty soon $1.5 trillion a year of interest to finance the debt. That's $4,000 for every man, woman, and child. If you have 4 people in your family, there you go, $16,000 is what we're talking about. And for what? So that you can get a $1,600 tax break from the big, beautiful bill, but the government is now going to be obligating you to $16,000, your family, to the national debt to the tune of $16,000 a family.
So you're telling me there's a chance? You're telling me there's nothing good?
I know.
No, there's some. Wait. There are some good things in this, and that's why you're going to have so many people vote yes. I mean, you can picture the ads they're going to run against me already, okay? Because there's border security in this bill. I'm for border security. There's what Trump's calling the Gold Dome. I want to know why the hell the Gold Dome doesn't already exist. Why are we building domes for other countries to protect them from missiles? Are you telling me we don't have one? So there's money for that in there. You can imagine the ads. There's a small tax break for seniors. It's not the no tax on Social Security bill that I have introduced. It's a small tax break for seniors that goes away after 3 or 4 years. The same thing about no tax on tips. That's going away in 3 or 4 years. They're getting rid of all that in 3 or 4 years. That's how they make the funny math work over a 10-year period. They give you all the goodies in the first 4 to 5 years and spend all the money, and they say 5 years later, we're going to start getting serious about it. And you can do all the math you want up here in Washington, D.C., but the bond markets are going to do their own math, and they're saying the D.C. math doesn't add up. And I think what's going to happen is the government is going to be tempted to buy our own bonds, and they've done this before. It's the hallmark of a banana republic, but we did it during COVID. And when you start doing that, you got to print money to do it, and you're going to cause inflation, and we could end up in stagflation, where you have high interest rates and high inflation.
Yeah.
Congressman Thomas Massie, thank you for always fighting the good fight. We appreciate it. Our audience appreciates it. Audience appreciates it. It always says here, Massie's one of the good guys. So, man, keep up the good fight. I know you're in the belly of the beast, as always, there in Washington.
I'm sorry I didn't cheer your listeners up probably with any of this, but
oh, that's okay. But you came with good hair, so that's right. We appreciate it.
Got good hair. That's good. That's good.
It's a good hair day for all three of us.
From a man who knows good hair, too, said that.
That's right. It's a hair piece. Congressman Massie, great to see you. Thank you so much, as always.
Thank you.
All right, coming up here on the show, we're going to talk about whatever happened to Maui. The real estate development deals there will shock you. We're going to look at all of the updates from that state, in the state of Hawaii, and what actually happened nearly 2 years after that devastation. We're going to dive into that, and directed energy weapons perhaps involved in this. Well, maybe the geoengineering part of it. We'll talk about all of that.
I see a comment here that's pissed me off. It said, Redacted is dumbing down the masses to support Trump. I wonder how you come to that conclusion.
No, that's a guy. That's a troll. He just keeps posting the same thing over and over again. Then he changes it and he says to support Zionist Trump. He just keeps posting the same thing over and over again.
Okay.
Are
you listening? Because I don't think that we've given the Trump administration a pass for
literally
very much.
The last 3 segments we just did on the show. Are the exact opposite of that. But again, don't pay attention to trolls and don't get riled up by them.
Okay.
Yeah, like
I'll get riled down.
This is me giving my own advice to myself, because I often will do that too. But I do like this one where they called you out for pronouncing it Tesla instead of Tesla.
Stop it. That's how Natalie says it.
She always says it Tesla with a Z.
Hey,
it's Tesla.
I was just watching, I don't remember who it was, but I was just watching something today, and the guy that I was watching pronounced it Tesla, exactly like Natalie does. So,
yeah, as incorrectly as Natalie says.
I'm going to keep doing that. So that's my accent. I'm like Hilaria Baldwin.
Okay.
It's my accent. I say the Tesla.
All right. Hey, coming up, we're going to talk about Maui in a second. But first, I'm so excited to share with you guys an incredible scientific breakthrough to support our long-term health and wellness. C15 is the first essential fatty acid to be discovered in 90 years. And get this, studies have confirmed that it's 3 times better, broader, and safer than all that omega-3 that they always push. You can see those big jars of omega-3 when you go to Costco or other places like that. It's pretty simple. Essential nutrients keep our cells healthy, which keeps us healthy. And if you want to get sciencey about it, studies show that C15 actually works by strengthening our cells, improving our mitochondrial function, protecting us against damaging free radicals. The result, better long-term metabolic, liver, and heart health. That's right. And guess what? Fatty 15 is a science-backed, award-winning, vegan-friendly, pure C15 supplement by replenishing our cells with that essential C15 nutrient. Fatty 15 effectively repairs our cells and restores our long-term health. I mean, that's fantastic. And right now, Fatty 15 is on a mission to replenish your C15 levels, restore your long-term health. I mean, and by the way, these come in a really nice bottle. We've got them. It's a gorgeous reusable glass bamboo jar. You can refill the capsules. They're shipped right to your door, quarterly in pouches made from recycled materials. You can get an additional 15% off right now of their 90-day subscription, their starter kit, by going to fatty15.com/redacted and using the code redacted at checkout. Again, that's fatty15.com/redacted and use that code redacted at checkout to get 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit. Well, whatever happened to Maui? This is a redacted special report. It was one of the worst disasters in modern U.S. history. And then it just disappeared from the headlines. I'm talking about Maui, 102 lives lost, thousands of homes and businesses destroyed, historic Hawaiian town left in ashes. Who's buying up this land? Where are the families now? And why does it seem like the people who lost everything are being pushed out permanently while developers move in and buy up this land? So today we're pulling the curtain back on the rezoning games that are taking place right now, the land grabs, the permit denials, which are in full effect. Yes, even the directed energy weapon theories that just won't go away. Why? The geoengineering, the climate engineering that's maybe mostly responsible for this. Why? Because it's probably true. So let's dig into this. Let's start with the basics. How is the rebuilding going? This is where my research started on this. Well, the short answer is it's not. Almost nothing is being rebuilt. As of a few weeks ago, just a few weeks ago at the end of April, only 8 homes have actually been rebuilt. Meanwhile, 341 permits have been issued for reconstruction, but that's out of the over 2,200 destroyed structures. So why the discrepancy? It's interesting. Is it because the people that own those structures have been paid off? Gone? Many of them, yes, gone, moved away, never coming back? The property numbers, astonishing. 300 property owners have been issued permits, allowing them to rebuild their houses on the front side of the, further from the ocean. Not a single permit, though, has been granted to anyone with a coastal home that was in the fire zone. Debris has been cleared from over 1,500 properties, so they're ready to go. Builders call that a scrape and build, One builder I spoke with today told me a scrape and build permit process can take 4 to 6 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks. Many of those locals are either living in temporary housing, hotels, or they've already left the island altogether, never to come back. Just for some context here, I wanted to look at a similar timeline, something that happened at a similar pace and time of the Maui fires. So I decided to look at the Marshall Fire near Boulder, Colorado. It happened around Christmas 2021, destroyed entire neighborhoods, gone. So how is the rebuilding process going? Great, actually. Let's dive into the numbers. In Louisville, city of Louisville, approximately 90% of destroyed homes. Now, maybe I'm saying this wrong. It might be Louisville, because, you know, like Louisville, Kentucky. But Louisville, 90% of the homes were destroyed and have been rebuilt or are under construction. 90% were destroyed, and almost all of them are rebuilt fully. The town of Superior, rebuilding permits have been issued for 74% of the destroyed structures. Over half of those rebuilt homes cleared for occupancy now. And the unincorporated area of Boulder County, rebuilding has been slightly slower because you have some big custom homes that were destroyed. But get this, 63% of homes there have either been fully rebuilt or have received permits to do so. Again, large custom homes on multiple acres in the Boulder region. Totally different from these 60, 70, 80-year-old homes in Maui that were small. They were small, humble homes. The native population that lived in these homes for decades handed them down through their family's history. And Boulder is almost fully back? But this is where it gets interesting. According to the Maui County officials and the mayor's office, they've offered permit exemptions to help homeowners rebuild quickly, but only if those homes aren't too close to the shoreline. That's right, rebuilding inland. Mostly allowed. Rebuilding on oceanfront land, sorry, blocked. Not going to happen. Not gonna work here anymore. So now let's talk about who owns Maui now. In the months after the fire, rumors started swirling that BlackRock and other deep-pocketed developers were swooping in to buy the land from desperate families. Of course, we know that BlackRock uses all sorts of subsidiaries, so good luck tracking it back to BlackRock. But the truth is a bit murkier than all of that, but it's still pretty troubling. According to a 2024 report from the Civil Beat, land sales around Lahina jumped significantly in just the first 4 months of 2024. Some of these were sales to local buyers, yes. One developer, though, alone paid $20 million for a 20-acre parcel near Lahina. And once you start seeing multi-million-dollar oceanfront deals going through while residents still can't even get permits to rebuild their homes, then you have to start wondering what's going on here. Was this all just a coincidence? Or was this a disaster leveraged for mass development? Take a look at this. We looked into this $20 million purchase. Here I went through it today. You can see this is an 8K filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Kanapali Land LLC entered into the purchase for the $20 million. And here's the smoking gun, guys. Again, over 300 property owners on the Mawaka side of Front Street. That's the side further inland from the ocean. In other words, the less desirable land from a development perspective. They've been granted permits to rebuild their homes, 300 of them. But guess how many permits have been granted for the oceanfront properties? Zero. Not one. This is 2 years after the fire. 348 inland building permits, zero for the coastal properties. So if you live inland, great, you're allowed to start rebuilding with a lot of conditions. If you can afford them, by the way.
Maybe they've been busy, Clayton, because the weather's been nice.
Been at the beach. But take a look at your screen here. See these green areas here? This is the area now. This is the prime coastal real estate. Zero rebuilding in these zones that have all been destroyed. And what's the excuse? Well, they say, environmental concerns. And in fact, they can rebuild with SMA permits. SMA shoreline area regulations will still apply to parcels located on the Macaulay Front Street, but SMA establishes control on developments near the shoreline to protect the coastal zone. Coastal erosion is a worsening problem, and 85% of Maui shorelines experiencing long-term erosion. You need to get that SMA permit. But locals aren't buying it, and neither should you, because what's really happening here is a form of slow-motion land seizure. They'll bury you in red tape, stall your permitting process, wear you down until you finally give up. You sell that land, you sell that property, usually at a massive discount to property developers. Then the developers swoop in, they rezone it, they get the permits, they get everything flipped and taken care of. Sound familiar? It should. It's happened many times before. Now let's address the elephant in the room, the directed energy weapons, DEWs. Sounds crazy, right? Science fiction stuff. Did the government, which has had directed energy weapons, climate manipulation weapons, geoengineering weapons since at least World War II that we know of, did they destroy or manipulate this valuable land on purpose? Well, of course, the story gained massive traction in the days after the fire when people started noticing, weird patterns, right? Cars melted next to untouched trees and structures. Homes burned to the foundation while plastic trash bins were perfectly fine. Okay. Blue objects mysteriously unscathed, blue roofs, blue cars, fine. Cars to umbrellas to rooftops. Maybe that's all a distraction now. You know, the same kind developed for military use since the 1940s. These climate engineering weapons, these directed energy weapons, were used to target specific areas in Lahina to clear land for future development. Maybe. Fact checkers, of course, quickly jumped in on this, called this nonsense. They said it's just dry brush. It's hurricane force winds down power lines that caused this. The good old fact checker websites, factcheck.org, a name you can trust. High winds, drought conditions led to Maui fires. No evidence that it was intentionally set, they said. Or the Associated Press, which is a mouthpiece of the intelligence community, received lots of money from USAID. They said, nothing to see here, trees and poles standing, that's normal. Video doesn't show a laser beam, that's just an old explosion from Chile that was used and shared online. But in their debunking, did they actually just confirm that, yes, hurricane force winds, dry brush conditions, all of those things were used under climate geoengineering by the United States military for a long time? All of this talk of lasers might be a total distraction. No lasers weren't used. There's no evidence that I found at all of lasers being used there. But in fact, wildfires as a military weapon has been long established. Take a look at this report. Forest fire as a military weapon. 1975's classified report exposing how the U.S. military uses weather modification and, yes, wildfires as a military weapon. Geoengineeringwatch.org. You can watch the full report on it. And we're going to have more on this part of the story with a special guest in just moments. But let me ask you, why is it always the most valuable land that gets conveniently wiped clean, just like the ones in New Orleans after Katrina, the most valuable riverfront property? Homeowners now permanently pushed out, sold off to casinos, shopping centers, now line the places where there were hundreds of homes before, all gone now. It's very great place to go stroll now with push your strollers around and go shopping. No homes there anymore to deal with. It's really hard to believe that this weather modification is it so hard to believe that this weather modification arson, or is it at the very least a willful act of negligence? Could it be used as a cover for something bigger? We've had the we've had the directed energy whistleblowers on our show who've worked on these projects, who told us right to our faces how the deep state has used these weather modification tools and directed energy weapons to launch earthquakes, destroy entire cities, and more, destabilize governments. It works. That's why they use it. And blame it on the weather. In California during the wildfires, smart meters being used in homes to incinerate homes from the inside out, when other homes on the street were totally untouched. Why did the fires start inside homes? I thought they were wildfires coming over the hills. Why did that house just there burst into flames because of a smart energy meter inside the house? That's odd, right? You decide. So let's not forget what else was lost. The Lahina fire didn't just destroy buildings, it erased history, natives who will no longer live there. Places like the Waiahola Church, founded in the 1800s, the Lahina Heritage Museum, gone, destroyed. Hawaiian families that have lived on this land for generations, as we've well documented over the years on this show, displaced, forced into hotels, shipped off island. And for what? So the resorts can expand? So foreign investors can turn Lahina into the next Waikiki? It's not just a land grab, it's a cultural erasure. 2 years later, the story of Maui isn't over, but the media has stopped talking about it, of course. And maybe that's the point, because the less we look at it, the more they can get away with. So we're here to keep looking, to ask the uncomfortable questions, and to expose those hidden agendas. And we've got more on this story coming up in moments. We're going to speak with Dane Wigington, geoengineeringwatch.org, specifically on the directed energy weapons section of this and the climate engineering used to destroy Maui. We're going to talk about all of that and more. Any thoughts? Thoughts, feelings?
Well, lots more questions than anything. Go ahead, Philip.
Well, you know what chaps my ass is when we first covered this fire when it first happened, we brought up the real estate angle of it 2 years ago. We're like, this looks like a land grab. I mean, like we were talking about that at the time. And then 2 years later, we get these reports where it looks exactly like a land grab.
Yeah.
Like if you don't want it to, if it wasn't a land grab, they're trying awful damn hard to make it look exactly like a land grab. Because
right. And
that's how you make it look like a land grab.
By having it actually be a land grab and having none of the permits actually go through on the coastal regions, and then put all sorts of environmental restrictions on top of it so that only multimillionaires can come in and adhere to those new permit restrictions. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant move.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to cover that part of the story, the other side of this, the geoengineering side, in just a second. But first, when is the last time that you have checked your home title? That's the legal proof that you actually own your house. We talked about these land grabs a second ago in Maui. You know, if you're like me, the answer is never. You don't look at who owns the title of your home. You're probably not even checking it. The problem is in today's AI cyber world, scammers are stealing home titles. I know this sounds like a scary, this is like fear mongering. No, it's happening, and it's happening in a huge way. And the FBI has been calling it out over the past couple of years. The FBI says it's one of the fastest growing crimes in the United States because people don't know that it's even happening. It's so easy to pull it off. All you need is a simple notary stamp that you can buy on freaking Amazon. You stamp it on a paper, you take it down to the county, boom, suddenly that title has been transferred and the homeowner doesn't even know that it happened to them. And then suddenly people are taking out mortgages in your name. This is happening. I'm telling you, we have a firsthand experience watching this happen. So people are stealing home titles, and then they're going and getting mortgages and loans in your home's name, using it as collateral, and you don't know it's too late about it. Criminals are forging your signature on one document, using a fake notary stamp on the other, paying a small fee with the county, and then your home title has been transferred out of your name. That's where our friends at Home Title Lock come in, because they will stop it. They can help prevent this from happening. And what's amazing is they will actually protect it. So if something happens to your title on your home, Home Title Lock will monitor it. And if your home title is stolen, they actually have a team in place that will get it back and fix the problem. I think that's the biggest selling point on Home Title Lock. They are fantastic. To me, their triple lock protection will actually go and actually get the title back on your home and fix it for you. That's how great they are. You're also going to get a free title history report plus a free 14-day trial of their $1 million triple lock protection. That's 24/7 monitoring of your title and urgent alerts. So if you get any urgent alerts and any changes to your title, if fraud should happen, they'll spend up to $1 million to fix it on your home. This is fantastic. So go to HometitleLock.com right now and use the promo code Redacted. And guess what? What's amazing is even in that first 14-day trial, like even if you don't continue their service, in that 14 days that's free just for signing up, you'll be able to look at all of this and find the monitoring of your home's title within those 14 days. But Natalie and I personally pay for our service. We pay for HometitleLock.com on our title of our home. We are proud card-carrying members, and we pay for it. They haven't given us a promo code or anything like that. We pay the full price for HometitleLock.com on our own home to protect our home. So go to HometitleLock.com right now. Use the promo code Redacted. That's HometitleLock.com. Use the promo code Redacted, and your first 30 days of their triple lock home title protection is free. All right.
Well, the other day, my mom asked me about the tornadoes in the Rocky Mountains that we experienced over the weekend. And I said, weather manipulation. And she said, what's that? Because she doesn't watch our show, obviously, enough. And I said, Mom, weather manipulation. Well, our next guest is the expert at this. Dane Wigington is going to join us and ring in on the segment Clayton just did about the fires and more. So, Dane, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, Dane, welcome to the show. So I wanted to talk about Maui specifically today and the weather manipulation. So it's almost 2 years now since the Maui wildfires. And as you saw in our previous report, as Natalie mentioned, they have not rebuilt these homes along the coast. They have not been approved for permits along the coast, clearly. They have been allowed to rebuild a little bit more inland, but this looked like a land grab from the very, very beginning. And right away on our show, we were saying directed energy weapons or weather manipulation. Clearly something seemed to be going on here, but you, my friend, have essentially confirmed that yes, in fact, weather manipulation, geoengineering, climate engineering has been used to destroy Maui. Am I right?
There's no question about that, Natalie and Clayton. Thank you for your exceptional reporting on the permit and property debacles that go with this, the agendas and objectives being carried out. In regard to what happened in Lahina, there's nothing natural about it. And with climate engineering, those that don't understand the issue and the technology involved, they can actually manipulate and are manipulating atmospheric pressure zones, which then affects surface wind flows. So in the case of Lahina, we had an extremely anomalous high pressure zone to the north, and there are energy weapons like HAARP in Alaska that can and are transmitting extraordinary amounts of power into the electrically charged ionosphere. HAARP can transmit 3.6 million watts of power. It causes an electrical chain reaction which superheats that layer of the atmosphere, and that expansion pushes downward also, and that creates the high pressure zone on the surface, which spins clockwise in the northern hemisphere, which spins upper level winds clockwise around that. So picture a clockwise spinning rotation north of Lahina. South of Lahina, we had a counterclockwise spinning, a very anomalous low pressure zone also being manipulated. And picture between those two, you create a surface wind field, massive surface wind flows, a bellows effect. And that is absolutely a result of climate engineering and atmospheric pressure zone manipulation. As far as the land itself, Natalie and Clayton, we had a flash drought declared 1 week before those fires were ignited. Source of ignition, separate subject completely. We can debate that, but what established the conditions for those fires to burn with such ferocity, and that is climate engineering, period, not just the bellows effect from the 80-mile-an-hour winds, drying out the region, flash drought effect, exactly what's described in the U.S. military document that you showed a moment ago, that geoengineeringwatch.org found on military archives and posted. And you have the incendiary dust. That's very important to consider. So you have this extended period of time, no precipitation, an incendiary dust that's part of climate engineering operations, starting with aluminum nanoparticles that are such an effective incendiary that that's the primary element used in military demolitions, thermite. So again, this incendiary dust covering everything.
It's like a fire starter? Is that what you mean? It was already in place.
Once ignited, Natalie, yes. Yeah. I mean, again, This is a military demolitions capable of creating extraordinarily hot temperatures. And when you add that wind, the surface flow, it's a bellows effect that creates much hotter temperatures. Every condition that was there in Lahina is absolutely directly attributable to climate intervention operations, AKA weather warfare, period.
So what's amazing to me, I'd never heard, and I know Philip is probably itching to like jump in and ask this question or ask questions too. And Philip, jump in when you want. But I've never heard of a flash drought. Usually, to me, that's like something that builds up over time. Like we've had 3 months now of no rain. That's not a flash. So I have heard of flash flooding. So they can literally create flash droughts,
like the way you dehydrate your beef jerky.
Yes, and that is exactly the term. That's not my term. That is the term from the meteorological community for what was declared in Lahina 1 week before those ignitions, flash drought. So when you saturate the atmosphere with desiccant particles, aluminum's a desiccant. It was used in deodorant to the detriment of our health, but you can actually dry out lower atmospheric RH, relative humidity, which sucks the moisture out of everything, foliage, everything on the ground. And yes, flash drought is now an official term and used commonly. It was used specifically in Lahina. So again, every piece of this puzzle we see fits completely with what's described in the military document, wildfires as a military weapon, as the preparation for that kind of incineration. Every single piece of this puzzle matches, Clayton and Natalie.
So couldn't we say then, well, like, all right, I just want to play the devil's advocate here. Let me be the skeptic, which is not usually my role, but this is all natural. You can have a flash drought. You could have these bellows like 80-mile-an-hour winds that come out of nowhere. You could have the perfect conditions for all of this. And then, it was the downed power lines, Dane. That's what started. It was the downed power lines, even though I think we knew that this was all coming, and I think they knew about the power. Anyway, now I'm reversing my own skepticism by answering my own question, but...
So stop there and ask the question.
Yeah. So it's all natural, Dave.
Again, this is that kind of argument being made and ignoring what we can see on satellite imagery, these operations being conducted over these regions. And for those that don't think, the skeptics that don't think that this kind of power is held over the hydrological cycle, for example, it's not speculation, theory, or conjecture. We have historical record. Project Popeye in Vietnam in the 60s, so successful at controlling the flow of precipitation over that country that in the 70s they passed ENMOD treaties, environmental modification treaties, forbidding that kind of weather manipulation for wartime purposes, but not over a country's own population. That's key. There's always those caveats, those loopholes. So again, that technology is not disputed scientifically, and any insinuation by official sources that there was anything natural about the Lahina fires is ludicrous. It would be like, again, running someone over in a crosswalk and saying, hey, it wasn't me, people die, it's natural. No. When we have these factors that we know have a cause and effect, we have to resort to Occam's razor principle that all things being equal, the most likely causal factors can't be ignored. And again, when you have aircraft dispersing desiccant particles that are also incendiaries, that disrupt the hydrological cycle, they cut off the precipitation, that coat the foliage and the structures with an incendiary dust, whatever the source of ignition, then you blowtorch those flames through those urban regions. There is nothing natural about this. We saw the same thing in the Palisades fire, dried out completely, almost 9 months with zero rain in that location. Not a coincidence. We see the same thing, Clayton and Natalie, for example, in the Canadian fires from 2023, the drying out of those regions and the incineration there. We have peer-reviewed science study advocating, if you can imagine this, advocating for the intentional incineration of boreal forests as a form of geoengineering. Think about that. So again, with the Lahina fire, there's nothing natural about the pressure zones that created the wind flows, nothing natural about the drying out of that region, nothing natural about the incendiary dust that coated everything. So again, this is verifiably a weather warfare event, period.
Can I say something about the lasers? Now, in my report, and I encourage people to go watch that separate piece that we'll release separately on the current state of Maui and the rebuilding process. And in that report, I talked about the distraction. There was so much, I think, and maybe this is a sort of a look over here, not over here kind of thing on the lasers, the idea of using directed energy lasers to ignite these fires. You think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you think that's a total distraction and takes away from the real story, which is the weather modification piece of this?
That narrative has done exactly that. So am I saying that directed energy weapons don't exist? No, I'm not saying that. They definitely exist. And especially when we look at, and many people don't associate installations like HAARP in Alaska, which is an ionosphere heater. And there are many around the globe. There's another in Antarctica, and you guys have covered that, I believe, as well. That is a directed energy weapon, but not of the type that many people construe in relation to Lahina, for example. So if we look at current technology, could an airborne platform actually ignite something on the ground? Yes, that technology definitely appears to exist. And if we look beyond that, once there's smoke in the air, or if there's any other type of cloud cover also obstructing a surface to ground trajectory, laser anything doesn't work, can't work. That's why the laser targeting in, for example, the Middle East can't work if there's any sandstorms or anything else. You cannot have obstructions. And a platform big enough to do the type of damage that's claimed by some of those narratives weighs about 1.8 million pounds, takes 18 semi-trucks to move that platform. That's not flying. So again, what we're trying to get people to focus on, again, is not a denial of very technologically advanced weapons that could be used under some circumstances. What we're trying to point out is that we have other forms of these weapons, like ionosphere heaters, that are creating the pressure zones. Again, the high pressure to the north of Lahina, the anomalous low pressure to the south. Between you have this blowtorch wind field. That is, in fact, a form of directed energy weapon that's being used to manipulate the pressure zones, and the actual jet aircraft aerosol sprayed dispersions that have been occurring for weeks and months over a location like Lahina are core to this issue. They establish conditions on the ground, a template with which once there's an ignition source, Clayton and Natalie, there's an unstoppable, catastrophic, completely unnatural blowtorch scenario. That's what happened.
Okay.
Well, yeah,
I think Philip has a question.
Go ahead, Philip.
Oh, no, yeah, well, I was just going to say, like if you can create those conditions, a Zippo would take care of it. You don't need a laser. You know, it's like if you can create the conditions, yeah. But like, so my question, because last time you were on, Dane, the Clayton and I were talking about afterwards, and this, it's the thing that like I can't get over mentally is the why. So if you have people that have this ability, like the capability of manipulating the weather, and they're dropping the aluminum nanoparticles everywhere, like they're poisoning the soil, they're basically making the earth unlivable for humans. So it's like the why ends up being like, do they want to be kings of a graveyard, but how are they going to survive? Like that's the thing that, like, what is the motivation behind it? Is it just ignorance, or is there, like, I just don't understand the why?
That's such a key question, Philip. Thank you for asking. And yes, it's doing everything you described. In fact, the ubiquitous contamination of the planet with bioavailable aluminum nanoparticulates is sterilizing everything, soils, root systems. That's why every time the wind blows, you see trees tipping over now, because the root systems are dying off, just like the crowns are dying off. They're destroying the ozone layer. So few talking about that issue. That's an immediate existential threat by itself. No, it hasn't gotten better. No, it's not the hairspray cans. Climate engineering is the core causal factor for ozone destruction, which is, again, part of the drying out of Lahina as well. So why would, quote, they do this to themselves? Because we're not dealing with sanity. We're literally not dealing with sanity. Why would they, the same they, ultimately those who print the money, that's who's at the top of this food chain, why would they detonate hydrogen bombs in the magnetosphere? Project Starfish Prime, Project Fishbowl, they thought it could collapse the entire atmosphere. Did that stop them? No. There's no dealing with insanity, and the psychoanalysis of those in power reflects a common thread, and that thread is this, quote unquote, from the manual: a near total lack of comprehension as to the consequences of their actions, even to themselves. Does an addict care the next fix might kill them? No, they don't. They do it anyway, and we're dealing with the power addiction here. They're not going to let go, and climate engineering, aka weather warfare, is the crown jewel weapon of the controllers, the weapon with which they can and are bringing populations to their knees. Without those populations ever even knowing they're under assault, they blame it on nature. Perfect question, Philip. Thank you.
I mean, and it's almost like, Philip, and maybe I'm wrong, but like it's almost like the idea of like you went to McDonald's, you got a big bag of McDonald's, and you're done with all the garbage, and you just throw it out the window. Like it's like a small microcosm of the larger destruction of the planet. Like they don't see that if I kept doing that every day in my neighborhood, my whole yard would be filled with garbage, and they don't care. Because that's how they operate mentally.
There's other aspects of this. Oh, I'm sorry, Phil. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just gonna say it's as if they just, like, the whole plan, like the master plan, is just to be the last ones left, as opposed to yeah.
Yes, that's true. And also consider that this is the paradox that they are also using climate engineering. This is a very important component of these operations to mask some of the damage done, much of the damage done, by ramping up the operations that caused the damage in the first place. And here's an example of that. When we were having, again, and I think we've discussed this before, snowstorms in New Orleans and Florida, while it's above freezing and raining in the whole polar region in the Arctic, that confuses and divides the population as to the true state of damage done to the climate already, much of it from climate engineering operations. So again, that paradox of using the same operations that caused much of the damage in the first place to try to mask some of that damage in an ongoing scenario so that they can continue to use this as a weapon. We have a military document titled Owning the Weather in 2025. That's a very interesting document to add into this equation, because this has been and is a goal. And if they could control the cloud layer in 1962, as Lyndon Johnson stated on film on the record, it's the first 30 seconds of our weekly geoengineeringwatch.org commercial-free broadcast. He who owns the weather controls the world, or he who controls the weather controls the world. How far have they come since then? So again, we have so many layers to these operations. We have winter weather warfare, engineering wildfires, engineering drought. They can bring populations to their knees without those populations ever even knowing they're under assault. That's exactly what's occurring.
So you would say with 100% certainty, any doubt in your mind that what happened in Maui was intentional and carried out with weather manipulation?
Zero doubt. And we can back that up with data. There is nothing natural about those events. What set the template for those fires to burn with such ferocity? Again, source of ignition, separate subject. But in regard to what established the conditions for those fires to burn with such ferocity, that is absolutely a core cause of climate engineering, period.
All right.
Dane Wigington, always great to see you. Our audience loves you and loves your honesty, and not afraid not afraid to hold truth to power here. We really appreciate it. I would encourage our audience to go watch your documentary, The Dimming, and visit geoengineeringwatch.org to learn more about this. You've got all the documents there. I've been going through them. It's really important piece of this Maui story. Dane, great to see you.
My deepest gratitude to you, Clayton and Natalie. Without voices like yours, all our research would not get the exposure that we need to have. Thank you. My deepest gratitude to you and your followers. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Same to you. Thank you so much, Dane.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us at Redacted today. Thank you so much for being here. Let us know what you think of any of these segments. Really, it was a dense show today. A dense show, dense topics.
Yeah.
Again, I really want our audience's feedback on what are the voices that they are seeing as we continue to, be pushed into a war environment right now. What are the voices that you're seeing about the debt? What are the things that we are expecting from our government that are not happening? What is it that, are we going to keep calling each other names over weather manipulation, which is so apparent now? It's like, that's not even a tinfoil hat type thing anymore.
Oh, you mean like calling a conspiracy theorist or something like that?
Yeah, things like that. Like,
yeah.
that's
I think we moved past that. I mean, I think, we're finally...
You think that, right? Because
I do, but I don't give a rat's ass when I see like an Associated Press article that calls us conspiracy theorists for talking about weather manipulation over Maui. Like those news outlets have lost all credibility. So I don't mind when CNN calls us that, or whatever.
Well, and if you watch X,
I think that,
like the way that I do, you can see the narrative on so many of these things. Like they try to start these narratives now, and it's just not working like it used to. Like people aren't buying what they're putting out anymore. I mean, you look at somebody that posts, like look at one of Netanyahu's posts recently. How many people are now attacking him compared to like last year or before? Yeah. People are waking up.
Yeah, I think you're right. And you're seeing that across the EU. Finally, you're seeing that in different world leaders who are quiet or kept their mouths shut about it. You're seeing that in finally some independent media. I mean, there's some topics they just feel like that they're off limits and they can't talk about because they're worried about, some sort of a retribution from Netanyahu or Israel or something else. And
yeah. What were you going to say, Philip?
Well, I was going to say that was kind of like the point of my question to Dane is really like, I think if we acknowledge, like, so the government acknowledges they have the capability of manipulating the weather. So we know that. So then why is it so unbelievable that it's happening? And it comes down to that because you'd have to be mad to do it. Right. And I think that's what they're hiding behind. Because like that was like for me the hang up is like it's like, okay, yeah, we can do this, but who in their right mind would?
Why would you do it to yourself? Yeah.
Exactly. And that was the question I felt Dane answered. And I didn't necessarily feel comfortable with the answer, but that, it could just very well be that they're just batshit
Let me tell you
crazy.
A little anecdote from Batman about I can't tell it.
The Dark Knight with the Joker?
About the guy who steals the rubies?
Oh, yeah. When Alfred explains to Bruce Wayne, about the man stealing the rubies, and he was only stealing it just because he enjoyed it.
Yeah.
He just wanted to,
doing evil.
Some people want to see the world burn.
To hurt yourself. Yeah.
I mean, these people are freaking nuts. And
I didn't tell it. I said, let me tell you. And then I told it. Was like, I actually don't remember.
But if you're going to let me tell the Batman story.
Okay.
Because I'm a Batman obsessed. But I think it's definitely true. And when you look at, just study World War II and study the Malthusian, study the Malthusians, study the transhumanist movement. We've covered deeply here on the show the transhumanist movement and the engineering, the killing off of individuals. I mean, this is and the transhumanist movement is alive and well, and it's infected our liberal population that continues to push for the chopping off of genitals of children. I mean, this is existing right now. This isn't some conspiracy theory.
Right.
I mean, look at Diddy, for crying out. Look at all of the sex trafficking stuff that we cover here on the show. It's not only is it alive and well, it's more prominent than it's ever been.
Maybe.
It's larger than it's ever been.
Maybe
yeah, but it's like
there's a push to finish off our human bodies and move us into AI so we're no longer vulnerable to these kind of things.
Now that's the next level. What do you guys think about that? The idea that,
let's just go there. Let's just do it.
Push us into an AI consciousness. Like, get us away from these physical bodies, move us to the ultimate plan, which is total control, in some sort of an AI.
Can you be controlled in a virtual consciousness? Like the Matrix? These are existential thoughts I've been struggling with lately.
This goes back to my reasoning why I still feel like the reason we'll never see the JFK files fully, the reason we'll not see the Epstein files, the reason we're not going to see all this information is because think of all the minds that would be woken to the fact that they've been lied to about this. And then it's like, okay, they lied about that. They lied about Epstein. So now what else are they lying about? You can't have those minds awake because we figured out their propaganda would no longer work. So it's like, you know,
too many people breaking free of the Matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah. They can't have just break free.
The Matrix would collapse.
Right.
Yeah.
So now, oh, no, we can't have that. It was a suicide. Okay. Thanks, Cash. Thanks, Don.
You can only have a few Neos out there. You can't have everyone breaking free of the Matrix.
Right.
Yeah, because you can still, they're conspiracy theorists. They don't know what they're talking about. They can still ridicule you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let us know your thoughts on that. We'll be back tomorrow with more existential thoughts. What?
Linda in our chat says, Linda Cezanne says, I'm still human 1.0. Thank goodness. So
how do you know that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Linda, how do you know that you're just
Here's
human
an old Chinese proverb is you're having a dream that you're a butterfly and you wake up. How do you know that you're not the butterfly's dream? How do we know anything? Right?
Now you're getting into the universe could just be like all being programmed by some kid in their parents' basement. We could just all just be part of that. That's the rabbit hole you go down.
Yeah, we're all part of Sim City or Civilization 7. You know, like we're all part of the simulation. Right.
Well, they could have designed me a little bit more symmetrical. I'm about pissed off about that, I guess.
Right. Good more svelte. We'll ask you guys this, and maybe we can talk about that. I would love to have a deeper discussion about the idea that we're all in a simulation. There's been a couple of whistleblowers who've come forward lately and who've been talking about how that's exactly that we are in a simulation. I mean,
they're prominent physicists. If you get into they're physicists that entertain that idea as well. I mean, that's a very scientific possibility.
Yeah. Okay. I want to let you guys know that this is the last week of school for my children. So it's the last. So the show is going to change a little bit.
That's
just
not a
in
simulation.
Terms of, yeah, that's real.
That's
they
real.
will actually be in the house while we're broadcasting throughout the summer. That means I don't have to rush off for pickups, which is nice. But they may be obnoxious, which is not nice.
They might be annoying and obnoxious, which children are.
Yeah. But we signed up for that. So I can be obnoxious right back. You already observed that, dear audience.
Clearly. I mean, I didn't say that.
That is a simulation.
What? It was so funny earlier because I was trying to get to Thomas Massey because we were running heavy. And we were doing something, and I was going to do like a rap.
Oh, I saw it.
Yeah, and David and I stopped myself, and I just like sort of stretched my fingers out. And David messaged me, and he said, "Did you just try to rap, Natalie? Did you try to rap?" And I said, "I stopped myself because then I remembered who I was married to."
I didn't like it. I saw it. I'll contend with it later.
Fiery Latina. I'm married to.
Oh no, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you just do that?
Nope. Just stretching my hands out. Just had to stretch my hand. It's getting a little.
Oh, I'll deal with you later, Poppy. Okay, we will see you guys tomorrow.
Is that a threat or a promise? I'm looking forward to that. All right, everyone.
Okay, see you tomorrow, everybody.
Let's go deal with me. Come on.